President Aoun, esteemed faculty and staff, and soon-to-be graduates, and of course all of the parents and families in this room. I'm here to say to all of you that this is an incredible honor to be with you here this morning. And as I was walking in, I looked up into the crowd and I could see so many of those proud parents. Alyssa's parents are dead center right here, and they told me their daughter studied chemistry here at Northeastern. She's been hired, and she's going to immediately start researching to help find a cure for Lou Gehrig's, and that's why I'm here at Northeastern today. As you prepare to embark on the next step of your journey, all of these proud graduates today, I'm here to remind you to revel in the excitement of the day, in all that you've accomplished here at Northeastern, but also here to urge you not to ignore the fear of what comes next. We have all felt it, we've all faced it, we've all pressed through it. And because of that, we are often the ones who will help define the path for all of those who will follow. I look back at my own journey, and there have been so many moments when I've wondered, when will I break through the fear? Will I break through it? And one of my earliest memories actually takes me all the way back to that first day of kindergarten. I was 4, just shy of 5 years old. I boarded the school bus in upstate New York, and this was a new journey for me. And I was riding down the rolling hills for what seemed to be an eternity when the bus pulled up at the school, and I remember thinking, I'm not getting off this bus. The bus driver coaxed me, and she made a deal with me that day. She said to me, if I can get you to get off this bus, I will walk you down that sidewalk, through that front door, right to that classroom. And I remember the kindergarten class was all the way down the furthest door on the left. The bus driver said to me, if you don't like it, I'll wait for you right here, and I'll take you home. So I took a few steps into that classroom, and I remember the voices, the hive of activity already, and it wasn't long before I decided, this isn't for me. I raced back to the doorway, and the bus driver was gone. She left me. I got there just in time, though, to see her all the way down the hallway, just leaving the building. But somehow I survived that first day. And I share the story because all along the way in life, we're all going to reach doorways, if you will. We're all tested at those doorways, and there's the excitement, not unlike what you're feeling today, but also the fear of what could come next. And so I'm here to say today to embrace that fear, because it simply reminds all of us that we are the lucky ones in this world, because we're being given the opportunity to explore what comes next. They mentioned here this morning that I was the kid at 12 years old who wrote to the local newsman in my town, and I asked, what do I have to do to have your job one day? At 12, it seemed those reporters on the local news were seeing the world, at least the world beyond my childhood neighborhood, and I would walk to the mailbox every single day hoping for a response. And one day, the letter arrived, and I'll never forget what he wrote. He said, competition in television news is keen. There's always room for the right person. It could be you. I soon visited that TV station at 12, 13 years old and began my own sort of co-op. I didn't know it was a co-op at the time, and in fact, what you have here at Northeastern have certainly mastered, growing, exploring, testing yourself in the real world, proving your worth. And had I known about the co-ops here, that you're all into this 5-year plan, I would have come to Boston a lot earlier. 5 years. It's more fun than 4. But back to that kid in that co-op. Spending my summers, school breaks, from summer to summer, I'd go back to that TV station. I remember they would march me right into that newsroom, and they had built a growth chart on the wall of the newsroom. So they would measure how tall I had grown from summer to summer, and they would haze me, joking how much slower my voice had dropped, how many octaves it had gone down. My first job was at that station. I was 21 years old, now reporting the news. The excitement, and yes, the fear of the responsibility that comes with a job like that. And I remember sitting in the newsroom one day, and I was working the phones, or so I thought, trying to work this story. And I got so frustrated I wasn't getting anywhere. And there was this veteran reporter who turned around and said to me, just put down the phone, get out there. You'll find the story. And it was sage advice. I have been out there ever since. I did the math last night when I was doing the final tweaks on the speech, and I think that you all were about 7, 8 years old when I first came to Boston. And I'll never forget living in my apartment just off Boston Common and getting the call that a plane had hit one of the Twin Towers. And of course, the next plane would hit. And we would all learn those planes had taken off from Logan, which is where I would stand and report for hours on end after that, knowing those hijackers had passed through Boston. I won't forget the faces of the agents and everyone at the airport. And it just reminds me, in coming back to Boston today, that this city, this great city, has been tested time and time again. And time again, you all prove, and this entire community proves, what it means to be Boston strong. It was while working here in Boston I got the call from ABC News in New York, and again, the excitement of the call and the tremendous fear of what would come next. Peter Jennings, Diane Sawyer, Charlie Gibson, I'd be working with them all, and soon I was being dispatched to disasters and hotspots all over the globe, and I hope you'll indulge me with three quick little tales, observations this morning that have defined for me how lucky we all are to have these moments of triumph like you're having today, and the opportunity to then chart our own path. First, Katrina. I was sent to New Orleans as we were all warned of this monster of a storm approaching. Families have been told to evacuate their homes and to go to the Superdome. And I remember my assignment was to go to the Superdome and ride out the storm with these families. And we were right there. I remember laying on the concrete with the producer that I was with, all of our gear, and soon the storm would hit. And I remember the roof, much like this, began to rip off during the storm, and the pounding rain drenching the families sitting in the seats below with nothing but plastic garbage bags holding the belongings that they were able to carry with them to get there. They were soaked, they were scared, and the incredible thing was that we all know the real horror of the levees breaking had yet to even occur. And when it did, those families were told to go cross town to the convention center, and there they would find help. But there was nothing, no food, no water, no power, no medicine. And I remember driving past the convention center, our camera lens trained on the faces of those families as they screamed, "We need help." And at the time, a young reporter, I just remember wanting to slide down into the seat of the car, feeling that this was a terrible invasion of their suffering. And only later, stepping back from it all, did I realize that those cameras actually gave them a voice. And had the cameras not been there, their painstaking wait would likely have been much longer. And in coming here to Northeastern today, I took note that how quickly technology has changed since then. You know, we all document our lives with our smartphones, capturing everything. We have social media, we have Twitter, we have all these tools. So even with the fear of the unknown of what comes tomorrow, you all have a voice in this room. And now, after you graduate, a responsibility to use it for those who are unable to use theirs, like that day in Katrina. While social media and the immediacy of it all often gets a bad rep of how trivial it can be, I'm here to remind you that in some places it is a way out. Standing in Tahrir Square, the Arab Spring, and so many young people were filling the square, my producer and I were right there as the horses came charging in, the fighters, taking aim at some of the young demonstrators, all the demonstrators, but some of them were young, your age. And there were so many lasting images for me. There was one young woman who was surrounded, and I remember the anger, the shouting, and at that moment it seemed that they knew who this young woman was. I would later learn that she'd been encouraging other young people to fight for their freedoms, and she'd used social media, and they didn't like it. She'd found a way to use her voice. Years later, when I hear people talk about how trivial the tweet can be, how fleeting a post on social media can be, I think of that young woman who didn't take it for granted. She knew the power of every word, and she was using it to fight through her fear. Lastly, just one more moment to tell you about it was during my first week as anchor of World News Tonight last fall. We traveled to the Syrian border to report on the children, the lost generation. It's been more than 3 years now since the children of Syria who have fled have gone to school. So many of them from middle-class families. Their parents were teachers, lawyers, local leaders, now fleeing across the border. And in this case, we were in Lebanon. They were living beneath. There you go. Let's hear it for Lebanon. But you will cheer on these children when you hear that they were living beneath torn plastic tents. And I was so curious, what we would find, what we would see in the faces of these children. And one morning, the sun was coming up, and we arrived there early before the children would wake up. And unlike the school bus that picked me up that morning for kindergarten, instead, the pickup truck pulled up. But their little faces, because they are children and they are resilient, they were beaming, they were smiling despite what they were about to do. They climbed onto the back of that pickup truck and they were taken out to the fields. And we rode along with them on the back of that truck, holding on, just as they do every day. And they were pointing the way for me. Because it turns out that those children, the child refugees, are now in many cases the sole breadwinner for their families. They weren't going to school that day. They were going to the fields to pick potatoes, wearing sacks tied around their waists. In many cases, the bags larger than their little bodies at that age, and they would work 6 to 7 hours in the field. The farmers, I would learn, don't hire the parents because they would have to pay the adults more. So that's why they hire the children. And we would also learn that many of the little girls in those fields make less than the boys do. And yet, at the end of their long day, 7, 8 hours, we saw something. They would skip across the dirt, laughing and singing across the field on their way to makeshift schools from UNICEF. And they were desperate for any sense of normalcy, any chance to go back to school. So every day, after hours in the fields, they went to class where they were proud to tell me how many potatoes they had picked up in the fields. And I'll never forget this little guy looking up at me, big grin on his face. But when I asked him about the work in the field, he pointed to his back to tell me how much it aches. We filed that report, and within a day, viewers donated enough to pay for supplies for 2,200 makeshift classrooms. And I thought, that is the power that we all have in this era. The opportunity I have as a reporter, but I'm here to tell you that we are all reporters. We all report on our own lives and on the lives of others, and we all have these tools now, social media, a voice. We all know the power of an image and what we can do to help. So please embrace the excitement of today and the fear of what's coming tomorrow, because we are all extraordinarily lucky to have the opportunity, the same opportunity those children hungry for school, skipping across that field, are hoping for. I try not to forget in my job the faces of those children, all of the faces, and taking on this new role, just about as you're about to take on your new role, no matter what your role might be. And you know, early on in my role, last fall, I got invited to do the late night thing. Jimmy Kimmel asks me to come on the show, and one of the first things they have me do is read mean tweets about myself. One was from my first week on the air, and someone had tweeted this: "And so the David Muir era begins," or as I say, David who? But it was a powerful reminder to me that what we do every night, it's not about us. It's really about all of you, all of those people, all of those children I've met along the way. And I simply ask all of you here today to go out there after today and help me report. Go out there and discover the world that awaits, find the opportunities. Don't forget to let others know about the people in need that you meet along the way. And just like that kindergarten bus driver, please know that as I race back to New York to do the news tonight, I haven't walked you up to that classroom door and left you there. Instead, I'll be quietly walking away, and just like that bus driver, I am sure I'll be cheering all of you on. Remember, one last thing, in this modern era we live in, we are all interconnected in extraordinary ways. Take the news. It's no longer some announcer sitting at a desk delivering the news every night. It's a two-way conversation, and we're just a tweet away from one another. And the president gave you a little preview. I just thought, because I always like to break stories, don't like to be last. Let me fix this here. See, I'm getting alerts right now as we're standing here. I'm just going to go to Periscope on my phone, hit the camera function. Yeah, you don't trust me, do you? I'm just going to send out a little message that says, "Here they come." Maybe a little at Northeastern. Class of 2015. And it has this function on here which is just really fun. It just says start broadcast. And so you're on live. Tell the world you're coming. I'm going to leave this right here. We're going to broadcast through my last line here, because just remember, this time is yours. And one last time, what a gift. The excitement of today, the fear of what comes tomorrow, and what a gift for me to have been invited here to share this day with you. I thank you all. Best of luck, and I can't wait to see what you do in the world. Thank you.